Hey everyone, my name is Sunny, or you can call me Bodge. I just wanted to kind of highlight our Anduin kill and talk about my thoughts on Holy Priest and perspective and some small things I noticed that hopefully can help you on your progression. I know that there's a lot of kill videos out there by really good players, but it's just the really entertaining, music over everything, and so I thought maybe I could share my thoughts and it would um, help some of you in your progression and timings and things like that. One note before I start is that this was pre-nerf. The nerfs I just saw came in a couple days ago, so this may alter the fight a bit, but I think the core mechanics should still be roughly the same. I was lagging a bit on this fight and couldn't figure out why. The quality was a bit lower, especially on pauses where I stopped to discuss things, but hopefully it doesn't bring too much away from the video. Other than doing my best impersonation here of a boomkin and pulling early, I only really missed the first Sanctify that should happen in this barrier coming up because I was checking my FPS. But at the end of the day, I found out that timing wise, in order to be able to get down to the second barrier, you can cast your first Sanctify directly on this set right here, and it is a perfect time to get down in the second group. Of course, you see I miss it, but if I cast it here, it comes up perfectly in time for the second down phase. I always want to have a star for the barriers too, they're pretty big. So right here, I see someone running towards me. I've had nightmares about stupid clears like that, so I just blink out. I'm never too nervous about using Serenity because you can get it back off cooldown so quickly, but I want to star the ads here and get into our bait position around decks. So one important thing about these star baits, normally we do left, right, left, but eventually you do enough pulls that people know where to be and where not to be. For Holy Priests, I have to him this upcoming barrier in 12 seconds. So I found personally you can soak the first set, you can soak the second, but you cannot soak the third set of stars and still be in an optimal position to be in the barrier or near the barrier, whatever it may be. So you usually can bait it by being the farthest person out, although it's not a perfect science. So if I don't get it by the second set, I actually run to where this tank is right here to try and not get the third set. But luckily here, I get the second set, I get to prep everything. I always want to have one Serenity ready for this barrier. So I will pop my Trinket on the Hopebreaker damage, pre-cast him for all the healing reduction, Divine Star, and then Serenity. And usually by that time the barrier is topped, everyone's very used to it. And so my Salvation that was originally signed for this barrier that I used in early prog, I'm able to save it for when the first group comes out, and it can kind of blanket the raid, and it was never a problem. We always got that barrier taken care of. Nothing really too much here. I'm looking ahead of time. I don't want to use Sanctify here because I'm getting ready to go down. I see my fairies coming up. I always want to use before we go down so that I can just start getting the mana, because I did really well with mana this pull, but there are pulls where I'm by the second intermission. So I want to precast MD here. Always start with Sanctify, because if you don't, you won't be able to hit all the ads unless it's perfectly timed. I have a Shining Force Weak Aura that I use right there, mouse over to help get that last ad into position. I mean, it's nothing too special here. People take usually one big damage hit that I'll have Star for or in Serenity for, but nothing too complicated. As I come out, we always top this barrier, and before each of the two intermissions, at some point, when Anduin is no longer taking big damage and the ad has not spawned yet, I want to Symbol of Hope into a Arcane Torrent if you are Blood Elf. It's just the most efficient way I found where you're not losing any big damage or big healing moments. So one thing to say about this intermission, or a couple rather, Holy Priests aren't the best at healing through it. Your Resto Druids really carry you through this phase. They really do. So our other Holy Priest cooldowns are assigned through this and that in the intermission, and that does great. But in terms of me, I do some spot healing with Serenity and Sanctify, but I really try and focus on damage here. because damage was a problem more often than not, whereas healing was not. So at most, I'll actually throw out a palm because its smart healing can help focus the lower health members of the raid. But other than that, I actually feed both Sanctify and Serenity into my smite damage with the tier set buff more often than not. Of course, if I have to refresh or if someone's really low, that's a different story. The only other thing is with the Divine Stars here, you have enough time. I wait for the first set of ads to all spawn here, and you can use it on that. And if you use it immediately when it comes down after that, and I will point that time out, there's a perfect rotation that you can use 1 star on the ads, 1 on the group, then the next on the second set of ads, and the next on the group. I almost get walled here, I believe. Or at some point, yep. Always try and keep a few yards away from you. So I just use my star there, and using it directly on cooldown is going to be up in time for the next set of ads. I'm looking to use fairies here for the haste buff so I can spam. This is a really good smite damage spam time because there's no ads. Your Restigers have all the healing HPS ticking in the world. I use Fade here as well because, again, there's constant ticking damage. There's no reason it won't have really good value, assuming you don't get hit by swirls or something else, because they should be baiting correctly. But I like to Shadow Word Death the monster souls that come out. When they come out, I immediately focus them and make them my highest priority for all of my damage, because it is really easy to miss the monster soul and have it be a quick group wipe. The only exception, so perfect spot for a mana pot here, is immediately after the intermission points out. The only exception to that is I like to death it. Death does a ton of damage to that ad. But since all your damage is amplified, it does a ton of damage to you, and I would not use it if you're below like 80% health, because I've had some hit me for about that. And so I'll usually, if I get a death off, I will try and Desperate Prayer that every time. Right here, if you use Sanctify off the bat, on this first big hit, even if it's not the most ideal with your CDR from your tier set, I found that it is perfectly up in time for the second group soak without amplifying it or reducing the cooldown. So I always try and use it on that first Hope Breaker hit. I believe that's what it was. Otherwise, I just spam Serenity on cooldown because it's not worth holding on to. You're still getting Echo of Light value, you're still getting everything like that. Using Star on cooldown. So I know when Anduin moves over to this ad here that's cloned, I am going to want to Fairies our Warlock, immediately use the haste buff to get some extra damage into Anduin because there's not a lot of damage on the group right now. I always star that, and so right here, we have rotted a couple times to these pain debuffs, the first set and then the second set. So I have a hymn on this barrier that comes up in 21 seconds immediately after. So I especially like to plant on the tank here so I don't get star debuffs, for better or worse. So I can really focus on making sure people don't mess up. And I think with the nerfs that are coming in too, it's more valuable because he has, so much less health, right? And the ads do too. So now I'm going to go run over to where the ad set are because there's a barrier spawning, and I'm going to plant in a spot where the stars are not baited and start my hymn into a salvation. I think I have to cancel a little bit early here because I'm scared of the star, so I start the salvation, but they move out in time, and so we top that off with salvation and star. At this point, you see Sanctify is back up, it's ready. Serenity is too, but you can reset it so quickly. So we're preparing to go down for the second King's Horn in 10 seconds. So just for perspective, you can get your Serenity back in 10 seconds as long as you have the tier set cooldown reduction bonus off of it. I just found it's never really worth it to hold on to Serenity unless something's 5 seconds or less away, give or take. So I precast MD as we go down. Don't precast too early. We've wiped a couple times because I did. The only exception to here in the down phase, I'll still do my Shining Forest whole Shalula, but since we had a lot less practice on this phase, especially once you get mechanics down, your progression goes quicker. I just randomly slam GS on one of the 4 ads. I think I do it on this top right one, but it just helps us catch up faster because the group rots pretty hard, especially the first few times you get in here. So topping one of the ads insta with the Serenity does the Lord's work. I think Cat's Convoke hits everything insanely quickly here, but yeah, and so I'm gonna get my Shining Force here on the far ad from our Druid. There he goes. Otherwise, it's just, you know, fairly linear healing. I don't know what I was going for there. Trying to get in damage where I can, because sometimes we miss damage on these ads, but we come out and there's ads that we have to finish off, and this is the only very scary barrier of the whole fight is right there, because we have to finish all of these Lost Souls, which will have less health, I believe, in the nerf. And then everyone has to run in there. We have very limited time to top off this barrier, and so we're gonna rush to it. I had to refresh stacks there, but I like to have a Serenity and a Chastise to be able to get the empowered buffs to top it off. I think our Enhanced Shaman does a lot there with his whatever the explosion of the Night Fae Covenant is, or Covenant ability. So same thing here. I'm gonna look to Symbol of Hope into a Arcane Torrent for maximum mana, and it's good points for the group and downtime. I think I might actually cancel it early here because I was so high. Yeah, I did. I saw how high mana I was and the group was for the most part, and so I'd rather have a few more GCDs of Smite onto the Fallen King. Same thing, just funneling all my damage, maybe getting a star on the small ads, but that's it. Otherwise, the Monstrous Soul is enemy number 1. I clearly hadn't learned from my mistakes and have to blink out, or I guess I could have gotten out, but was standing too close to the wall. I believe our Warlock calls for PI on the second set here, so just having things in your mind that you know you need to do. It's not rocket science or anything. I like to throw out Holy Fire on cooldown, for sure. I believe I might death this ad. I could be wrong, but you can see kind of a scale of how much damage it does. Yep. Yeah, and see that hits for what, 70% of my health-ish. So be careful, make sure you're not accidentally baiting any of the swirlies, you don't have any ads or anything, and your top's full, because that freaking hurts. So I do make a very big mistake here that I was really frustrated about, and if I had my audio loud enough, you could hear it. I have fairies. We've gotten to this point where I was at 400, 500 mana before, so I instinctively want to pop fairies as quick as I can for this Hope Breaker, for the haste buff, and to start getting my dots rolling for mana before I have to heal. So I pop it here. My position to stand is between the boss and purple marker up here in the top corner. Just that's where we were assigned, and so I pop it here, and I want my flowers for the haste buff. I pop it insta, and you can see already the mistake I make. I have to leave my flowers to get to my bait position in time, and I lose the haste buff. Not the biggest thing because I already have so much mana, but yeah, it was frustrating. So my hymn is here assigned to the first set of clears, and I actually like to hymn a little bit early because the hymn will never save someone, the hymn healing. But the healing amp plus like a heal or a Serenity will absolutely. So it's not the group damage that I'm ever scared of here. It's the individual spot healing because we have people die. So I actually try and channel him a bit early for the clears to get the healing increase set in place, and then I can single target. And yeah, I'm losing a bit of HPS, but I'd rather, you know, keep someone alive and not just pad for the sake of padding. I'd rather have more important, more effective healing. I should do better about doing damage to the boss here, but we had only seen this phase probably 3 or 4 times meaningfully. So similar to how my hymn was the first set of clears, my salvation is the first set of clears on the second set. So this Hope Breaker hurts really bad, so you're going to see in the time I'm going to pop Fade, and I'm confident. I have 12% leech and, you know, a lot of self-healing given I'm a priest, or holy priest, so I don't mind standing away from all the AoE here so I can be in a good position and I don't have to move afterwards. So at this point, I'm looking at the boss's health going, oh, okay, he's dead. I'm one of the last clears assigned in this phase, which you might not even see anymore after the buffs. I get fairies for the little bit of mana, because you can see I'm already below 10k, but mainly for the haste buff. So I salvationed early there, just again for the spot healing thing. It was not as imperative, but... So right here is, I believe, is when I would normally clear. And the last kind of big thing I was thinking in my head that you never know when you have value for, I GS myself just in case. But I'm thinking boss is dead no matter what. Even my full duration of Angel will reach most likely to the end of the boss, and I'll have that increased healing without having to move or do mechanics or anything. Whereas if I run in and I clear, my partner Tang here, he could die, he could miss it, he could do something, and I really don't want us to wipe any earlier than we have to versus my debuff expiring in 16 seconds. We'll see. The quality is a little shoddy, I apologize. But, so I decide, you know, I'm not going to clear. He called anyone else that wasn't in the clear that I was supposed to be in is just going to expire and die. And I thought that's the same thing. Keep the healing on the important people. Everyone's gonna die anyway, and I'll die with all these people cleaving around me. So I'll just go into Angel form, not risk wiping any earlier, and I can do way better healing. So that was my thought process here. You see, I stutter stepped about to go clear because I thought, oh, it's my turn, but nope, chose not to. So we're expiring here. He's at 300k, and I mean, that's all she wrote. He dies. He should die much sooner with the nerfs, but yeah, so I hope some of these was coherent. Some of these tips were coherent, and I know I can kind of just ramble on about all these things, but there's a lot of niche things that I discovered with Holy Priest on this fight that are not as intuitive as you might think, and we had way too many pulls on this, so I had more time to figure it out. But I hope it was helpful, and so if there's anything I missed or if I didn't touch on something well enough, please just like comment, and I'm more than happy to answer. I enjoy figuring out these types of things and optimizing play. I know I've of course had my fair amount of misplays in this, but yeah, I hope it helped a lot, and feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you.